Okay, number 10, let's go Roger Staubach. The Cowboys quarterback in the 70s. Well, other than that, but that was his prime, right? So he's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He's a 1-time Super Bowl MVP. He's a 1-time second-team All-Pro. He's a 6-time Pro Bowler. He's been on the All-Century team. He was on the 70s All-Decade team. So here's the thing about Roger that nobody knows, right? He was a huge part in making that brand what it is today. And I think that's noteworthy. Right? He was the original America's quarterback. He served his country, came back, and took an average team and won 2 Super Bowls with him, with a legendary coach. I mean, that made that brand, and he was a huge building block. I mean, the league is 150% different without Roger Staubach in it. Without him having the success he did for the Cowboys, this league looks completely different. Who knows if Jerry, what this looks like, right? Who knows if Jimmy Johnson ends up taking this job? Who knows what that means for Troy Aikman, who we'll talk about in a little bit, right? All these things, everything could be completely different, right? The Cowboys aren't a big brand without him. Who knows how much they win at all without Roger Staubach, right? Without them on the map like that, is that success, like I said, continued on to Aikman? Do they get, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, etc.? There's so many questions, and if Roger Staubach doesn't come out and be an ultimate winner, none of that happens, and the league looks completely different, right? Roger at 10 might be slightly overvalued, but he was one of the biggest winners in the NFL, in NFL's the history of the league, and he's been one of the biggest faces of the biggest brand in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue it, and you can't tell the story of the NFL without talking about Roger Staubach.
Oh, what to the point? You can't tell a story without any of these guys. But I get even more so than more guys. I completely agree.
The whole landscape of even the geography of where top players come from, like without him, do you think football in West Texas is that big?
Maybe not. Same thing. You could say the same thing about Aikman, but he was before Aikman, so I agree.
It's the preset. It's everything that brought that culture together. Is him.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, number 9, let's go Brett Favre. So he's a 1-time Super Bowl champ. He's a 3-time MVP, 1-time Offensive Player of the Year, 3-time Second-Team All-Pro, 3-time First-Team All-Pro.
Yep.
He's 4th all-time in touchdowns. He's 4th all-time in yards, fitting for a guy who wore number 4. Favre was the ultimate competitor, right? Nobody remembers this, though, but the Packers were terrible before Favre got there. Out of the 22 previous seasons before Brett Favre, they only had 9 winning seasons, only 2 playoff appearances, and in both they were one and done. They hadn't won a playoff game in 22 years before Brett Favre. He gets there, and then the next 11 seasons with Favre, they have 1 losing season. They missed the playoffs only 4 times. They win a Super Bowl, and they come really, really close to a second. And here's the thing about Favre that a lot of people don't think about. He was kind of one of the first gunslinger type of quarterbacks. He kind of pushed the envelope a little bit, right? He was undersized, undervalued, and he said, you know what? No. And he was a gunslinger. He went out there. He was the ultimate competitor. Another one of those America's quarterbacks. And I think also, yes, the Packers have always been a great brand, but they were down in the dumps. And let's also remember that he kind of fostered, he didn't like it, but he kind of made a little bit of what we see today with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
And you can't deny that at all. Do we really think Aaron is a Hall of Famer without Brett Favre? There's a chance, but the chance was certainly increased by Brett Favre.
Yes.
I'm just saying. He made Mike Holmgren, who was the coach when he won that Super Bowl. He made him a Hall of Famer. You don't think he's a Hall of Famer without him? I don't think he's a Hall of Famer without that Super Bowl.
Brett Favre was one of those guys that fought back a little bit when they drafted Aaron, though. He didn't want to help out. He didn't feel it was his job.
And he was actually one of the first quarterbacks to do that, right? And most quarterbacks, they took him under their wing, all that type of stuff. I don't judge him for it.
No.
Whatever. Brett Favre at 9. I think also one of the things that comes into play here is the eye test, right? I think the eye test is important. It's not everything, but I do think it's a piece of evidence, right? Just like all this is. Just like the resumes that I state as soon as I say the name, right? Just like, all-time in yards. Just like, how they get there, right? We'll get to a guy here at number 6 who his prime was so fantastic that we talk about that, right? All these are pieces to the story, pieces of evidence.
Yeah.
And I think the eye test with Favre is important. I mean, a gunslinger, one of the best arms in history. Number 8, let's go Troy Aikman. He was also one of the best arms in history. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion. He's a 1-time Super Bowl MVP. He's a 6-time Pro Bowler. And he's pretty much on this list for one reason, and it's those. He was a winner, and he was the head of one of the best dynasties in football history.
Oh, that was
the 90s Cowboys.
Crazy.
They win in 92, 93, and 95. That is one of the best primes of all time. He's big. He was almost ahead of his time, right? He's big, strong, athletic. He could move. He had a big arm. Straight up winner, period. And I think that lands him in the top 10 ahead of some other legends. Is 8 too high? You could argue me. I don't think he falls outside the top 10. No. I think at worst he's a top 10 quarterback of all time.
Yeah. I mean, playing at that level for a brand like that with that team on that stage, and really that's when they adopted America's team as everybody loved the Cowboys.
Yep.
Or you hated them. They were such a polarizing team.
You tuned in to watch, though.
But those are the best kind of teams. I mean, you can sit here and talk about how much you hate that New England won like 6 years in a row, it seems like. Not really, but that's what it seems like. But that dynasty, you either loved them or you hated them, and the rivalries were great because of it, and the league did great because of it. And Troy Aikman led one of the best of them.
You either tuned in to watch them, to root them on, or you tuned in to watch them lose. Yeah. Either way, you're giving them a rating.
You're watching that game.
Period. All right, number 7, Johnny Unitas. He is the one that barely makes the cutoff. Looking back, maybe we should have done just Super Bowl era, but at the end of the day, he did win a Super Bowl in the Super Bowl era. He's a 1-time Super Bowl champion, 3-time NFL champion. So it wasn't the Super Bowl yet, but it was right before the cutoff, so we're going to count it. That's basically 4 Super Bowls we'll go with. He's a 3-time MVP, 5-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time second-team All-Pro. He's a 10-time Pro Bowler. He's 17th all-time in touchdowns. And get this, in a league where they barely passed, he's tied for 5th all-time in yards.
Wow.
5th all-time in yards. Barely makes the cutoff. Like I said, he retired 49 years ago, something like that. But he's got 4 championships. One was a Super Bowl. The other, like I said, the other 3. 3 MVPs is ridiculous. The All-Pros are impressive. And like I said, in a league where nobody passed, he's 5th all-time. That's just insane to me. And you know what I mean? He was the first all-time great quarterback, I think. He was the first guy where you're like, oh, he's an all-timer. Like yeah, Y.A. Tittle and and company are great. That's fine. They're not Johnny Unitas.
No.
They're just not. He was the first glamorous, really big, all-time great quarterback. I think that lands him at 7th. Could he be overvalued because he was played so long ago? Yes, but I think it translates. 5th all-time in yards. And he played that long ago in the 50s and 60s.
Right, it's almost like
impressive.
How you have to calculate inflation now, like what things used to be worth and what they are now.
Yeah,
that's what we had to do with Johnny Unitas here. But yeah, he fits 100%. I mean, altogether 4 championships moves you way up the list right off the bat.
I agree. It's a sport that's measured on winning.
Yeah, I don't care if it's Super Bowl era. Obviously, we're going to weigh Super Bowl era a little heavier than the the NFL champion, or it wasn't in the NFL, just the football.
Yeah, no, it was the NFL, but there was also the AFL.
Oh, that's why
right. There was right. Yeah. Anyway, okay, number 6. This is a guy who was one of my favorites of all time, Steve Young. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champ. He's a 1-time Super Bowl MVP, 2-time league MVP, 1-time Offensive Player of the Year, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time second-team All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler. He's 32nd all-time in touchdowns, but when scaled to games played, he's top 20 in touchdowns. That's not even counting his rushing touchdowns. He's another all-time winner. And here's the main reason he's on here. That prime that he went on a run that I don't think we'll ever see again. His prime burned so hot that he deserves to be here. His prime is a top 5 prime of all time. Starting in 92, he goes on a 7-year tear in which he goes 77-24 with an average pass rating of 102, a TD to interception ratio of 2.6 to 1. It was an unbelievable run, and I think that lands him top 10. Maybe 6 is too high, but you cannot argue outside of the top 10. That is one of the best all-time 7-year runs in the history of the NFL, period. I won't hear an argument against it.
No.
I'm just not going to take it.
Steve
Young one of the best 7-year runs of all time. Steve Young at 6, the latest installment of our top 25 quarterbacks of the last 50 years. Steve Young at 6, Unitas at 7, Aikman at 8, Favre at 9, and Staubach at 10.